On this week's Gridiron Report, we have the NFL season officially over. The Detroit Pistons had about as good of a trade deadline as we could have hoped. The Red Wings get a well-needed break, entering a playoff push. And we brought back Grid of the Week, so let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the Gridiron Report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire. Sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire. Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud.
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First, all Detroit sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, and the Super Bowl champions come from the NFC, but alas are not the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, that's right. The Philadelphia Eagles are your 2025 Super Bowl champions after defeating the evil empire Kansas City Chiefs 40-22 in an absolute beatdown. So yeah, Ty, I guess let's just get right into it. Let's talk a little Super Bowl. Let's talk some shop. What are your takeaways from the game?
Yeah, you and I were talking just before we started here, and the final score, like you said, 40-22. It felt like it was 60-0 for most of this game. Like that score is so much closer than the entire game. And I know Kansas ended up scoring 16 points in the fourth quarter, so that's what made the score be a little bit closer. But just absolute dominance from the Eagles. I feel like we haven't seen that much dominance in a Super Bowl since the Seahawks crushed the Broncos in like 2014 or something. I mean, it was just an all-around ass kicking from by the Eagles.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that Broncos game definitely sticks out in my mind. Probably a lot of people forget the Mahomes Super Bowl against Brady. I think it was 2020. This certainly wasn't as much of a beatdown as this game, but that still was a beatdown. And I think there was a lot of similarities between that Super Bowl and this one, where Mahomes, I mean, he was just getting pressured. He looked so uncomfortable. He's an incredible quarterback that seemingly he almost never looks uncomfortable. He always is the most comfortable man in the pocket and on the field. He couldn't do anything the entire game. It was really crazy to see. And I mean, all the credit to Philly, to Vic Fangio, their defensive coordinator, for I really don't know how he did it. I don't even want to pretend to know like all the stunts that that Eagles defensive line was pulling, but I mean they weren't even blitzing. So I don't know how they did it, but huge credit to them.
Yeah, I want to come back to the not blitzing part because I think that ties into Detroit really well. But yeah, I saw an interview with Bryce Young just on leading up to the Super Bowl, and he was saying he played both these teams, and the Philly defense was theoretically or strategically the easiest to come at and go against from an offensive standpoint, just because they're not running a bunch of blitzes, they're not running a bunch of stunts and moving guys around. It really truly was just guys going out there playing clean defense, fundamental, and executing defensive game plans. You're right. Mahomes looked extremely bothered by this. I think for now we can probably put the Mahomes comparing to Brady to bed for now, right? I know Brady had his ups and downs, but I think with a performance like Mahomes just put on, and I know again that Eagles defense was great, I think we should put that to rest for the time being. But yeah, you mentioned the lack of blitzing that the Eagles drew up against the Kansas City Chiefs. Mahomes was blitzed on 0 of his 42 dropbacks, and he still was sacked 6 times. And so I think that, again, ties into Detroit perfectly as we kind of connect this back to the Detroit Lions and what they can learn from this and what we can learn from this. That natural pressure wins championships. You brought up the last time the Chiefs kind of looked out of sorts like this, and Patrick Mahomes did in his last Super Bowl against Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. That was the same thing. Like you said, you recall that game. He was running for his life the entire time. That defensive line truly won that game, that Super Bowl for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Eagles did the same thing, and they did it all naturally. They didn't have to make this incredible scheme and blitz guys coming off the backside and blitz the linebackers and stuff. They were doing what exactly Detroit couldn't do this year, partially because of the injuries and stuff and Aiden Hutchinson going down. But even with Aiden, we weren't getting much production from anyone outside of Hutchinson. So we still had to kind of manufacture pressures and stuff. And that's something like this Eagles team didn't have to do whatsoever. And Detroit desperately, I think, needs to grab on and watch what Philly did in the personnel they had to try and kind of replicate that natural pressure to allow, just your D-line boys to eat, so your secondary and your linebackers can work on their game in the pass game.
Yeah, so I guess that's a great point. I love that this is a Lions first podcast, right? So we gotta relate this back to the Lions. And so I guess my question to you, Ty, next year you have a healthy Aiden Hutchinson, you have a healthy Aleem McNeil, and a healthy DJ Reader on your defensive line. Is that enough to kind of simulate, exactly what the Eagles did in this Super Bowl? Like, are those guys going to be enough to really get pressure without, a ton of blitzing? Or, can that even be replicated? Can it be replicated what the Eagles did, or is it impossible? Is there any guys that we could sign?
No, I don't think so. I think the Eagles played their defense was a perfect game. A perfect game against say what you want about the Chiefs this year. Mahomes probably put that team on his back more than everyone kind of thought. Their offense definitely was less than stellar, and he kind of carried them in and covered up a lot of their mistakes. But the Eagles defense, that was a perfect defensive game by the Eagles. So to kind of look at what the Lions have already in-house and say, can we replicate that even if we're healthy? I think the short answer is no. I think Hutch was having a career year. He was having a historic year before he went down. You think he stays healthy, he still is going to produce like that. But you look at outside of him, DJ Reader is a fantastic run-stopping nose tag. He's fantastic on the inside. I don't have his numbers in front of me, but I don't think he's much of a sack machine. Aleem McNeil, kind of the same. And they're great. I love them both in the middle. They basically put a stop to any run game. I don't really think either one of them are producing a bunch of sacks and a bunch of natural pressure like we would need them to. So you look at, Zadarius Smith, who we have under contract for next year as well. I know he's a hot name to throw around when talking about, potential cap space casualties and whether we're going to keep him around for next year, and that can be handled in a different episode. If you get the Zadarius Smith that we got for a few weeks against like the Vikings and the Packers, him and Hutch maybe could create a lot of that natural pressure. It's not going to be as much as the Eagles got in this game, but it might be enough to get us there. But I don't naturally think, just based on the tailing of production that we saw from Zadarius Smith, and like we said during multiple episodes, that like we were told that's what he does. Like, just wait for it. He's going to start to kind of peter out towards the end of the season. I don't think that's going to be enough to replicate it. We've seen clearly that that's kind of the formula, at least for beating the Chiefs. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. There's a lot of questions on whether Travis Kelce will retire, but they're not going anywhere. They still have a young, in his prime, Patrick Mahomes. So the formula is out for beating the Chiefs. If they're going to end up back in the Super Bowl next year or whatever, the Lions know defensive natural pressure is what beats the Chiefs. I don't think the team that we have and put together is the right team or has the star power and the production to beat them. I don't know. What do you think?
Everything that you're saying leads me to believe that we need Myles Garrett. Like that's kind of what I got from what you're just saying. Like you need a little bit extra. You talk about the old adage, defense wins championships. We saw that firsthand on Sunday night, where an Eagles defense just absolutely roughed up one of the best, if not the greatest passer of all time. And I think the Lions just need a little bit extra, and that extra oomph could come from one of the best defensive players on earth, and Myles Garrett. And I think that you have him, and that path to the Super Bowl just becomes that much easier.
Yeah, dude. Just watching the Eagles front four, front five, absolutely eat against the Chiefs. It made me. I don't have it. We have it in our show notes that I'm all in on Myles. We talked last week about him just because the rumors were out there, and he officially requested the trade, and we talked about what it would take to get him, and I think it still would very heavily rely on what it would take to get him. But just watching that dominance from the Eagles defense line, very rarely in a Super Bowl, nonetheless, do you see like back-to-back sacks. But nothing riles the crowd up like back-to-back sacks. Like just asserting your dominance, like we're going to go out and sack your quarterback, and then we're going to line up and we're going to do it again. I remember, it was like 2013 Michigan State against Michigan. The Spartans defensive line sacked, I think it was Devin Gardner back then. I think it was actually 3 to 4 times in a row. Nothing asserts dominance. Like we are controlling this game, like sacking a quarterback 2-3 times in a row. And I could not be more in on Miles. Now again, I'm not going to go crazy. I saw some people saying like when the Browns inevitably asked for any offensive player from the Lions in that trade, people were saying like, you do it. I don't care who they ask for, you do it. And we're definitely not going to go that far. I mean, that's just absolutely absurd. But I'm doing. We said last week. I was on record last week saying I think 2 first-round picks. I'm doing it. And I just think seeing the dominance that the Eagles had on the Chiefs, I'm doing more. I'm doing 2 firsts and probably a little more now. I'm that pumped up for it.
Yeah, and I think probably recency bias, like just watching
sure.
a Super Bowl, watching a team, fulfill all of your dreams. Every Lions fan, we've had dreams of Super Bowls for decades and decades, never even gotten to one. So yeah, maybe a bit of recency bias, but yeah, I do think send the farm. As long as it's not a gigantic farm. But yeah, I mean, two first round picks. I think that'll if that gets it done, then yeah, I would love to see him in Honolulu Blue. That's me as a homer though.
Yeah, and even outside of him, I mean, a lot of comparisons and correlations can be drawn from the Eagles to the Lions. Obviously, they played the Chiefs 2 years ago. They lost both coordinators. They went out retooled in the off seasons. I had obviously another season in between, and now they went out and won in dominating fashion. You can just draw so many correlations and so many direct lines from the Lions to the Eagles. I think Brad Holmes he obviously was watching this game too. He recognizes those similarities, and I hope he learns from Howie Roseman and the Eagles front office and how they did things and kind of replicates it in a way, because Detroit's in the same sort of boat. Now, we obviously didn't lose in the Super Bowl. We lost last year in the championship game and then obviously fell even shorter this season, but it is very similar. We lost in disappointing fashion, lost both our coordinators, and now Brad Holmes, it's on you. Go out, retool this team, identify the areas of weakness, put the guys in place, go out, put your nuts on the table and sign the guys you need to get this thing done. Because, I like you just said, recency bias, I'm all in on it. I think we're close. I'm all in on it. So one thing I did notice, though, I just, and not to get off track with the Super Bowl, and I don't know, do you have anything remaining as it relates to the Lions and Super Bowl before I jump into this, actually?
Nope, nothing more. I mean, it's just off season starts now. And yeah, like you said, Brad Holmes, time to get to work, boys.
I saw, this is random, but I saw some podcasts and sports networks and like TV shows and stuff. They use the phrase "the big game." I don't know if you've seen this. They use the phrase "big game" rather than Super Bowl, just because I guess the NFL has a propensity to go after programs and stuff for using Super Bowl and will sue them. I didn't know that. I think referring to it as the big game is fucking stupid. And I just wanted to say, NFL, I'm not afraid of you. We're talking about the Super Bowl all episode. We talked about the Super Bowl last week. We'll talk about the Super Bowl next week. I'm not afraid of the NFL. We'll never refer to it as the big game because we're afraid of the NFL. I just wanted to say that.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, shoot. I guess I gotta back you up on that one. But yeah, I don't know. Talk about like trademark law. I think that we're probably using some Detroit Lions logos in our podcast art. So yeah, hopefully the NFL doesn't come after us just yet. But if it happens, that means you made it, right?
Hey, Goodell, why don't you come on the pod and discuss it with us, and then take us to court if you want. I don't care, but come on the pod first and talk about it. So,
hey, Roger, come and take it.
We do have a listener voicemail surrounding the Super Bowl, the NFL, the Lions, and stuff. So let's give that a listen right now.
Hey guys, love the show. Calling right on the heels of the bowl and wanted to get your opinion on the new rules that the NFL has put into play this year. Specifically for our kickoffs, the box out where you can't run stuff, and the announcing that you're going to do onside kick only in the fourth quarter because you're not allowed to do third quarter now. Just want your opinion on that. Personally, I think it's horseshit. It's taken away the strategy. You have to announce that you're going to be onside kick, where they'll be saying that you're going to fake punt or have to do 2 run plays and then a pass play. They're taking away the strategy, in my opinion. And I was just trying to get put from you, just Love the show. Bye.
All right. Thank you for the call in. I know had a little bit of bad reception there, so it's going in and out, but I got the gist of what you were saying. I love this call because the NFL has done a lot in the past few years to try and evolve. We usually applaud the NFL for doing things. We make fun of leagues like the MLB for making rules so stupid and making it so hard for the players or fans to watch and follow. The NFL usually does a pretty good job at listening to the fans and to the players and coaches and stuff and making rules accordingly. The new kickoff rules and stuff, half of them I get. So what the caller was referring to was first and foremost the kickoff rule, in which everyone is starting halfway down the field. They can't move until the ball is kicked. There's a box in which if it lands within there, you have to run it back. If it goes outside the box, you can accept it for a touchback. That rule I know was put in place in order to try and reduce the number of concussions. A lot of injuries, surprising or not, happen on kickoffs and kick returns. So that rule in particular was put in to try and eliminate as many injuries as possible. I think they're seeing good numbers, at least injury-wise, thanks to that rule. So I have a feeling that rule, while it may be altered a little bit, it may be it probably is here to stay. It is unfortunate. I, for one, bet that the opening kickoff in the Super Bowl was not going to be a touchback because I forgot that new rule was in place. It very easily was a touchback because he was kicking it way down the field, and so that was unfortunate for me. But that one I kind of understand. The other one that he was referring to was the onside kick rule, and I think this has to be up there with the dumbest no-based rule I've ever seen be implemented in really any sport. So if you don't know, the new onside kick rules are as follows. So the onside kick team must be trailing in the game. The kicking team must be trailing. The kicking team must declare the onside kick to the officials before the attempt. The ball must travel 10 yards, as it obviously always has been. The kicking team can use a holder for the onside kick, as always. A few different things, such as they can do a bounce kick, drive kick, drag kick, whatever you want. So basically, it's that the team must be trailing, must be announced to the officials before, and I believe it has to. I don't have the list in front of me. I think it has to happen in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. It's just the dumbest rule in all sport. It takes away, like the caller said, it takes away all strategy. It was the Saints a few years ago in the Super Bowl that came out in the second half and did a random onside kick to get things going. I mean, that is so electric. I don't understand this rule. It's the dumbest fucking rule I've ever heard.
Yeah, and Greg, thanks so much for the call. So here's the thing though. You can't have one without the other. If you have the new kickoff rule, for player safety, and we get it because of course kickoffs are seen as very dangerous. Guys running 50 yards down the field at full speed. I get why they changed it, but then you can't have it both ways. Of course, you're going to have to call all of the guys to the original where the original kickoff is for the onside rule. So I get why you got to announce it because otherwise it's just the kicker standing at the 35-yard line or whatever. So you can't onside it to no one there. So yeah, you can't have one without the other. I do see what they're doing with player safety. I'm a fan of player safety for sure, but this is football at the end of the day. I probably would like them to go back to the old kickoff rule, and I don't think it's going to happen because I think it was pretty successful overall. The NFL got exactly what they wanted. I think a lot of the times they wanted a further starting position for the offense, starting the ball on the 30-yard line versus the 25-yard line. While it doesn't seem like much, that really does add up over the course of a season, over the course of scoring for an entire NFL season. So, of course, the league's going to want that, and then, of course, less injuries as well. So, yeah, you can't have one without the other. I'd be interested to see if college football follows suit and goes to this new rule because, of course, this past college football season they had the normal kickoff. So yeah, we'll certainly see, but it's just the unfortunate fact of the matter is you can't have one without the other, and so we do get this really bogus onside kick rule that does ruin a lot of the fun, especially late in the game.
Yeah, my dumb brain didn't even put together the fact that you can't do an onside kick with the format. Like if they line up for an onside kick, it'd be obvious. That makes a lot of sense. There's got to be a happy medium though, in which maybe you move up the kickoff, so 90% of kicks go back through the uprights and it's a touchback to eliminate the actual returns, but you're still lining up as you used to. So in the off chance you wanted to sneak in an onside kick, you still could. So there's got to be a happy medium, and they hopefully will find it. Again, when we have Roger Goodell on to yell at us for using the term Super Bowl rather than the big game, we'll be sure to ask him that. So it's a great question. I appreciate the call in, Greg. Again, make sure you guys, if you're going to join the conversation, you can call into that. That phone number is 313-306-7939. We will play it on the podcast, do a quick discussion on it, and jump into it. It could be about football, like the last few ones were. It could be about basketball, baseball. It could be about Detroit foods. Whatever it is, we'll try and find the best place to put it into the podcast and discuss it. So, okay. That is our Lions First part of the podcast. Really the main Detroit sports news this week, though, surrounds the NBA. So the NBA trade deadline was last week. We alluded to it during last week's episode that was obviously released last Wednesday. The trade deadline was on Thursday, but we had really our first moves happening on Wednesday, Wednesday evening. Detroit kind of held majority of the cards for the deadline in terms of they were really the only team with cap space available. So they really, while we weren't, we talked about whether we want to trade, sell, buy, stamp pack, whatever. We were really the only ones who had the ability to facilitate the bigger trades. If you wanted to trade for, a big star or something, but you don't have the money to take on his full contract, we were going to be the teams to step in. You give us a second round pick or two for our troubles. We'll throw in a little bit of cash to make the trade balance out. We'll be on our way. So everyone was kind of waiting for Detroit outside of the Luka Doncic trade. We touched on that last week. That was absolutely fucking bonkers. But Detroit ended up making their first move on Wednesday. So that was he traded with the Philadelphia 76ers. They basically sent cash to the Sixers for KJ Martin and 2 second-round picks. So the Sixers, they signed KJ Martin to a deal this past offseason. With this intent, they were planning on being able to try and use him to manipulate the cap space a little bit, get below the floor, trade him for some pieces. Didn't really work out, I think, as they planned. So Detroit happily would take KJ Martin for 2 second-round picks. At first, when this came across, it was kind of like, okay, now we're getting going. And then things started to slow down a little bit, and people on Pistons Twitter went nuts. They were absolutely mortified that this was the only move Trajan Langdon was making. They were pointing at guys all over the league. This guy has, this Batman has this Robin. This guy has his sidekick. Cade Cunningham gets KJ Martin. Like, what are we doing here? And I was doing my best, fighting the good fight on Twitter, saying, guys, let's give Trajan Langdon some credit. It's still 24 hours till the deadline. Let's see what else he does. And damn it, he almost proved me wrong because he went a full 24 hours. He was right up until the last few minutes of the trade deadline when he made his second and final move. That was jumping into the Jimmy Butler mega trade. That actually happened, I think that was actually on Wednesday or Thursday morning, but it happened quite a time before. Obviously, Jimmy Butler went to Golden State. Andrew Wiggins from Golden State was going down to Miami. A few other guys. It was a 5-team trade, so a lot of other guys kind of going this place and that place. But the way Detroit jumped in, they were trading the newly acquired KJ Martin and a second-round pick to the Utah Jazz for Dennis Schroeder, and then also in turn we got another second-round pick from Golden State. So it was a lot of convoluted moves, second-round picks flying left and right, guys going all over the place. But Detroit ended up with Lindy Waters, Dennis Schroeder Jr., and a second-round pick from that trade itself, and then a second-round pick coming from the KJ Martin trade too. So really, in turn, Detroit did exactly what we wanted them to do. We got Dennis Schroeder. Dennis Schroeder, a 31-year-old free agent after this upcoming year. 6'1". He's basically a secondary ball handler, a creator that Detroit needed. This year, he spent time, started the season with Brooklyn, was then traded a few weeks ago to Golden State. His numbers this year, he averaged 14.2 points per game, 6.2 rebounds, 5.4 assists, and shot 36% from three this year, which are pretty average numbers when you look at them across the board. It's not bad, but it's not great. But then if you break down his numbers even further from his time to start the season with the Brooklyn Nets compared to the time he spent the last few weeks with Golden State, his Brooklyn Nets numbers were fantastic. So when he was with Brooklyn to start the year, he was averaging 18.4 points, 3 rebounds, 6.6 assists, and almost 40% from three, as opposed to, obviously, then his numbers all came down when he went to Golden State because he was pretty inefficient. But it's important to remember that Golden State runs an offense that Dennis Schroeder is not suited for. They run a lot of cutting and slashing and kind of an offense in that regard. Dennis Schroeder is more of like a pick and roll kind of guy. That's what Detroit runs, their offense. So he just didn't quite fit with that Golden State offense. I think that's probably why they got off of him so quickly. But he's exactly what we wanted here in Detroit. I mean, shout out to Trajan Langdon. I could talk for hours about how Trajan Langdon maneuvered this trade deadline and what he did with Paul Reed a few weeks ago, cutting him and then signing him to a new contract. I mean, just claps and shout out to Trajan for this trade deadline.
Yeah, it might not seem like much, but Trajan Langdon, he's stacked some second round picks, and he's also picked up some pieces that I think could help Cade. It seems like Cade, as great as he is, he can't play the entire 48 minutes, and it did seem like he does need some help out there, especially with some of the injuries that the Pistons have picked up. And so, yeah, I mean, I mean, it's Dennis Schroeder. It's not gonna move the needle a ton, but like you said, you said his stats. When he was on Brooklyn, he was shooting almost 40% from three, and so it's a nice little pickup for sure. And I'd be curious to hear from you. Of course, these moves that Trajan has made, how does it really compare to what we've seen from Pistons GMs of old, like Troy Weaver, and what he was able to do, or I guess the lack that Troy Weaver was able to do over the course of a couple of years. What have you seen from Trajan to think like, yeah, this is actually different and Detroit's going in the right direction?
Dude, you might have just derailed our entire podcast, because I could literally talk for the next 9 hours for the differences here. Going back to Troy Weaver's main thing, and if you look now, Troy Weaver's with the Washington Wizards front office right now, and they are easily the worst team in the NBA. So he's going on back-to-back seasons of having like record bad teams. So shout out Troy Weaver. But what his main thing was that he loved reclamation projects. If you look back to all the trade deadlines of the last like 3 years that he was with Detroit, he was acquiring guys that if it worked out, it's a fantastic story, and he looks like the smartest guy in the room. But the odds of that happening were so minuscule. I mean, he was going out and getting guys like Marvin Bagley, who never really caught on in the NBA, guys like James Wiseman, these guys who had potential at one point and had the intangibles, but never caught on, and for a reason. And not a single one of them really end up panning out. And the other thing, he just absolutely loved to throw around second-round draft picks like they were candy. I mean, he was throwing them in. We were giving up draft capital for these reclamation projects. And so when Trajan Langdon came in this year, the very first thing he said is that we got to restock the cupboard. We have to collect assets before we do anything, because we need to be able to have basically cannon fodder and some ammunition to make some moves. So I mean, I alluded to the Paul Reed move a few weeks ago. So when Trajan Langdon came to town, he brought with him Michael Blackstone. Both of them with the Pelicans organization. Both of them are known. Trajan's known for putting together fantastic trade packages and making things work that way. Michael Blackstone is known for manipulating contracts and salary cap and stuff to make that work for the team. So the two of them have gone on just this absolute dominant spree for Detroit. Again, so we won't go back to Paul Reed. They cut him a few months ago. Everyone loves B-ball Paul. He's a fantastic player. His energy is infectious. He thrived here in Detroit. So when he cut him, everyone kind of went nuts. Detroit then, I think it was like a day later, re-signed him to a veterans minimum to open up Detroit's already league-leading cap space to give them even more money. So everyone's like, oh, we kind of jumped the gun on that a little bit. Trajan knows what he's doing. And it just kind of moved on to KJ Martin. If we were to kept KJ Martin and not flipped him for Dennis Schroeder, we could have put him in, basically used the money that we saved just by converting Paul Reed to a veterans minimum and put KJ Martin in that, and basically not use up a single cent of our cap space just because they made that move a few months ago. At the moment, we don't have any extra first round picks. In fact, we have one likely going out this year. We can get into that when we talk about the draft down the line. But Detroit now has 15 second round picks over the next 6 years. So that's going from Troy Weaver, who absolutely handed those out like they were absolute candy, to Trajan Langdon, basically taking them in. And you want to even pick up the phone and talk to us, we'll take a second round pick to do that. So again, no extra first, but just last year, OKC, like the going rate for a first round pick in exchange for second rounds, OKC sent 5 second round picks to the New York Knicks last year for a first round pick. So about 5 second round picks can likely net you an end of the first round draft pick. So it's just night and day. It's so refreshing having a guy like Trajan Langdon leading it and having trust. That's why on Twitter I was out basically fighting the good fight, being like, guys, let's give Trajan a chance. Like, for God's sake, he's done nothing but prove that he knows what he's doing. And then he came around, made the deal, and everyone was like, oh, shit, we probably should have given him the benefit of the doubt there. So, yeah, a shout out Trajan, shout out the team.
Yeah, I love what I see. And it's awesome to see a guy pulling the strings behind the scenes, for the future of the team, but also to see, the team, the present, even with injuries to guys like Jaden Ivey. You still have Cade Cunningham balling out. And the Detroit Pistons, they at 6 right now in the East, in a couple of really winnable games. I think is this right? Back to back games at Chicago. Today and tomorrow. That's an interesting one. But yeah, they're in prime position to not only make the playoffs but potentially get up to the 6th seed to or stay in the 6th seed and avoid that play-in tournament. And their remaining schedule is also very, very doable, very winnable. They have the 8th easiest schedule remaining. The final 29 games of the season, their opponents are a combined record of 497 and 495. So literally, they're playing 500 teams the rest of the way. And so, yeah, I mean, I do see them having a lot of success down the stretch to, potentially solidify themselves as that 6th seed. I don't really see them, going much higher, but maybe the 5th seed. I think that would be a reach, but I certainly think, having solidifying that 6th seed is certainly in the cards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, like I said, the 8th easiest schedule moving forward. If they take care of business against the teams that they should, so that is against the Wizards, we play the Wizards twice, the Pelicans, the Raptors, the Blazers, the Jazz, the Nets, and the Bulls twice, as you just mentioned. Those are all winnable games. Those are all teams that are bottom of the barrel, well below us, kind of like us last year. We take care of business against those teams, we will end up, and that's just saying, and we lose every other game, just taking care of business against those teams, we'll end up around 36 and 46, which would have been, just looking back to last year's records, it would have been a play-in game. I think the Atlanta Hawks ended up being right around that record. They were in the play-in game. They ended up winning the lottery and getting Zachary Rice this year. So so you can still kind of end on that, and that's a whole other conversation, as we get again more towards draft, talking about the lottery and stuff like that with our draft pick. But that's if we win our winnable games and we lose every other game, which I don't think either one will probably be the case. We'll probably drop 1 or 2 within that winnable stuff and steal 1 or 2 in the games that we probably shouldn't win. So, yeah, I mean, Cade's averaging almost 30 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, 1.2 steals over his last 11 games. Ron Holland is hitting on his last 10 games. He's hitting like 38% from 3, which is like his big knock. If he can unlock his 3-point shooting, he's going to be a weapon in this league. Malik Beasley is the best 3-point shooter in the league and absolutely loves Detroit. He went to Trajan Langdon before the trade deadline and said literally like, please don't trade me. I want to be here. I love it here. Please don't trade me. I mean, things are looking up. If you're not a Detroit sports fan, or a Detroit Pistons fan, I should say, jump on the bandwagon. I'm telling you, get on. We got room. I'm not being selective. Jump on. Hit me up. I'll walk you through who's playing what and who's playing well and all the numbers and stuff like that. Start watching. These guys are so fun.
Yeah, dude, they're awesome. And yeah, Threesley, I mean, behind Cade will always be my number one, but I do think Malik Beasley is he's up there as my second favorite Piston. I mean, the guy is awesome. And it's crazy to say he just got on the year, but he's great. He loves Detroit. Like you said, yeah, marched into Trajan's office, said, I want to stay here. I want to be a Piston. And that really fires me up. And I think that just speaks to, the culture that the Pistons are building right now. It's really fun to see. Yeah.
And speaking of guys, note this incredible transition I'm about to do. Speaking of guys that want to be here in Detroit, the Tigers, we already talked about Jack Flaherty. He same thing. He was in Detroit last year, said he didn't want to be moved at the deadline. Unfortunately, it's a business. He got moved. We got 2 great prospects and Trey Sweeney that assisted in the playoff run, and Theron Lazaro, I think his name off the top of my head. In return, he obviously is back. We talked about his signing last week, but moving into the Tigers, still no Alex Bregman. Why can't we get this done? I mean, why can't we get this done?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even pretend to know like how the back and forth goes between, a general manager of a team and the player's agent. I have no idea. And it's still the off season, but of course we're already into February. We're creeping into I think pitchers and catchers
tomorrow
have already reported. Or they're reporting tomorrow. Okay, yeah, and then so I mean that means spring training. I mean it's here. It's not just right around the corner. It's literally here. So I don't know how that changes the leverage. I feel like the longer and longer that Bregman doesn't sign a deal, I feel like the player kind of loses that leverage. Again, could be completely wrong there. At the end of the day, it doesn't even matter. I want him to be a Tiger. The rumor is that the Tigers are offering him a 6-year contract. No idea if that rumor is validated or whatever, but yeah, we just would love to get it done and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, like you said, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. First spring training game is next week, I believe. I agree. Like Detroit or not Detroit, at what point do players need to be signed by? And if this was the NBA, I'd probably be more on top of it. I don't know, like when is like the deadline of like you got to get these guys signed, Detroit or not Detroit. It sounds like you reported, you said it's reported that the Tigers have a 6-year contract on the table. I think in that same report I saw something similar, basically saying that the Astros are now once again out of consideration. I think it's down to the Tigers, the Red Sox are back in it again, and the Cubs are also making a last-minute push for him. So, again, really the only credible team that's been start to finish involved is the Tigers. I agree with you. It's Bregman. I don't care if he signs the day. Well, now I say that I don't care if he signs the day before the season. You still take him. But damn it, that is still so difficult to put on a team and put the pressure on guys that are trying to make camp and the guys that are trying to schedule and trying to figure out this roster. It's brutal. I mean, we got to get this thing done. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned the Cubs too. I think it'd be funny if Bregman, he went to the Cubs, reunited with his teammate Kyle Tucker there. Kyle Tucker's on a 1-year deal. Of course, I wouldn't like to see that. Would definitely like to see him on the Tigers. But I mean, besides that, I think unfortunately that's pretty much all our Tigers news, right? I did see super random fact or anecdote on Twitter, on X, the Everything app. Everything's happening on X. The Cleveland Guardians have just announced that local blackouts are officially gone. And as of today, you can stream every regular season Guardians game on clevelandguardians.com for just $99 for the entire season. So I guess my question to you, Ty, how does that sit with you? Because we talk about, blacked out games all the time and that they suck. So, I mean, $99, would you pay it? Would you like to see the Tigers do something similar?
I alluded earlier when we were talking about the NFL and the rules that they put in place, the kickoff rules and stuff, saying the NFL usually does right by their fans, and most rules they put in are understandable. Now they are getting a little bit, they're reaching a little bit with their different games being on different networks and Peacock and Amazon and stuff like that. So they're starting to anger some fans, but no league messes with their fans more than the MLB. This is, if you don't know, so the blackouts that we're referring to, it is literally impossible to watch your sports team, whether you live in Detroit and you're watching the Tigers or you live in Houston and you're watching the Astros like Kyle. It's impossible to watch your Detroit sports team. It's easier to live in some random other city and watch your team. If you're in the area, you literally cannot watch your team. And fans have been furious about this for years. Eventually, they actually aired all their games on Fox Sports Detroit, and then that was bought out by Bally. Bally was offering, you could watch it on their app, but their app was literally the worst thing. Like it was worse than, it was like just an Etch-a-Sketch. I mean, it was the worst thing in the entire world. It never worked, and eventually Bally announced bankruptcy, and they're being sold to Amazon last I heard, but it was going to take some time. Some games just weren't being broadcast. If they offered like DetroitTigers.com, $99 for the entire season, I'm doing that 7 days a week and twice on Sundays. I mean, I'm doing that. I'm not even gonna like try and wrangle up a few friends and try and split that cost and like cheap out. I'll do it myself. I don't care. There are 164 games in the season all summer. I love nothing better than having the windows open, middle of the summer, grabbing a beer, having the Tigers on in the background, throwing burgers on the grill or something. I will do that 10 times out of 10.
Man, I mean, shoot, you're talking so much. I have the biggest smile on my face right now, just waiting for the weather to warm up. I know it's already kind of warm in Houston right now, but it's still wintertime. Would love for the weather to warm up. Opening day can't come soon enough, and I completely agree, man. When I saw the $99, I'm like, wow, you know what? That might be a little steep, but you said it best. It's 162 games. It's the season's 5 months long, so kind of amortize that out over 5 months, and it's actually not a bad price, right? So yeah, super random. Like what I saw from the Guardians. I know some teams in other leagues. I'm thinking of the Phoenix Suns right now and Matt Ishbia putting all of their games on local television, so that the same thing, so that there are no blackout dates. Would love to see maybe that might be an extreme that is just not really possible for all sports and for all teams. But yeah, I mean $99 to be able to stream every Tigers game. Absolutely sign me up, because yeah, it's oftentimes almost impossible to watch your home team, and that should be words that are never uttered. You should always be able to watch your home team on your home network. So yeah, I know we're both of us are pretty fired up about that. So Super random anecdote, but hopefully the Tigers can somehow follow suit.
Yeah, I just did some dumb quick math. If I watch like 2/3 of the season, we're sitting at somewhere around like 105 games, and that seems like maybe a lot, but like I'll maybe watch an inning or two of about 105 games. That's like just over like $1 to $1.50 per game. Like I'm doing that all day long.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. So that's it for the Tigers. Hopefully we'll be jumping on next Wednesday and talking about how the Tigers have signed a very team-friendly deal for Alex Bregman and, didn't have to completely overpay for him. But until then, I think we can move on to our beloved Red Wings, who currently sit at 61 points in the standings. That's good for the second wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference. And the Wings are actually off until February 22nd. So it is the All-Star break. However, this year, instead of the normal NHL All-Star game, the NHL is instead hosting a Four Nations face-off tournament as a preview to what is the NHL's highly anticipated return to Olympic participation in the year 2026 for the 2026 Olympics. So, All-Star game, All-Star break, I should say, no All-Star game. And instead, Team USA will face off against Sweden, Finland, and Canada in a round-robin tournament. So each team will play, I believe each team will play each other once, and then the top two teams from that round-robin group stage will advance to the championship game, which is going to be a winner-take-all. So scoring format, you get 3 points for a regulation win, 2 points for an overtime win or a shootout win, and then 1 point for an overtime loss. Of course, no points for a regulation loss. I'm pretty pumped for it. I think this is, a pretty cool preview to the Olympics. I'm not a huge All-Star game guy. I feel like nobody is a huge All-Star game guy, no matter what the league is or the sport is. I don't know. I've never been super into it, but so I'm not really crying or anything that there is no NHL All-Star game this year. I think the Four Nations is really, really cool. And then, Red Wings that are participating in this tournament, Lucas Raymond from Sweden, and then D-Boss himself, Dylan Larkin from the good old USA. So, yeah, Tyler, I don't know if you've had a chance to look into the Four Nations at all, but, how do you think the boys in red, white, and blue stack up against the rest of these teams?
Yeah, I was hoping you were giving a breakdown because I had no idea. I saw this. I hadn't had a chance to really look into it, so I wasn't sure what the format was going to be. Like you mentioned, All-Star games across basically all four major sports are pretty much dying, except for probably baseball. As shitty as we just referred to the MLB, they kind of do the All-Star weekend correctly, or as correctly as you can compared to the other leagues. So it's nice to see, that they're at least trying. I know the NBA is trying some different things. This will be fun. I'm excited. I admittedly don't know who I would be pulling for. I mean, who I would think would win. I'm going to be pulling for US of A, and then I guess we'd have to go Sweden behind them because of Lucas Raymond. But I'm here for this. I'm ready to watch it. I mean, and it also was just tying it back to the Red Wings, a well-needed rest. I mean, we were firing on all cylinders as we talked in the last few weeks. They needed this rest as they move into the second half of the season. I think I saw we have the hardest overall remaining schedule of any team in the NHL, kind of the opposite of the Pistons there. So regardless of this four nations tournament, which I'll definitely be watching, hopefully the Red Wings can use it to rest up and get ready for this playoff push.
Yeah, for sure. It's tough to see that they have a really tough end of the season schedule. But yeah, I mean, they're one of the hottest teams in hockey. So I do agree that the break is coming at a good time from a sense of, the boys need to rest. I do think that they had so much momentum going. They won, I think, 6 out of the last 7 before the break. So, it's not to say that they're not going to keep that going after the break. But yeah, I'm excited for this overall. I was looking at the rosters just briefly. Team Canada is stacked. They are very, very, very good. Just thinking the likes of Cale Makar and McKinnon alone. I think they're the best team in this Four Nations tournament. I think that Team USA is a very close second. I would love to see a USA versus Canada final. I think that would be, more or less a pick 'em there, just because both teams are very solid. I think USA, they might be without Quinn Hughes. He might have picked up an injury, but the rest of the boys are good to go. So yeah, it's going to be sweet. Certainly be pulling for Larkin, pulling for Raymond. And, hopefully they can score a few goals on the national stage.
Yeah, and come out of this with no injuries.
Yes. Yep. That's the most important part for sure.
All right. So last segment of the show, if you're a listener from back during the Lions season, each week during our review of each Lions game, we were giving out grit of the weeks. So Kyle and I would both pick somebody that, just showed extreme grittiness during the game, during the previous week, something that, some overall outstanding game, an outstanding play, something like that. We gave one out each week, and then we also tried to predict who next week's grit of the week was going to be. After the Lions season completed, that fell to the wayside just because we had no one to give it. We decided we're going to bring it back. It doesn't necessarily just have to be about the Lions. There's other Detroit sports going on. There's just grittiness in the Detroit city in general. So we're going to go ahead and bring grit of the week back. So I will kick it off. I'm going to go with my grit of the week. We already talked about him quite a lot this episode, and I said it already. I could talk for 9 hours just strictly about him and the work he's done before he got to Detroit and the work he's done for Detroit, and that's Trajan Langdon. I mean, he has taken the city. He's basically taken what was an absolute dumpster fire. I mean, we were a loss away from being the worst team in NBA history, and has them playing not even to a play-in spot, but right now a solidified NBA playoff spot, and then just handled the trade deadline perfectly. Didn't care what anyone said. Didn't fall for any of the big contract baits. It didn't go big star hunting and try and get Brandon Ingram, or Zach LaVine or anything. He stuck to his guns. He did what he said. He collected trade assets, and he still got Detroit what I think is one of the best available for what they actually needed. So Trajan Langdon, congrats, buddy. Grit of the week for me.
It's huge, and it's huge too. Trajan, I mean, it's probably the best award that you're going to get in your entire life. So yeah, congratulations to you. I am going to stay on the hardwood as well for my grit of the week, and I think it's got to go to Cade Cunningham, and not necessarily just for what he did this past week. I think he was actually injured and missed a game with an ankle injury, although he is back. But really, just kind of a collective grit of the week for the past 3 or 4 weeks. Whatever. Just really the fact that Cade Cunningham, he has blossomed into the player that, I mean, yourself and I and a lot of people in Detroit, we knew the caliber player that Cade Cunningham is, but he's finally getting the recognition that he deserves on a national stage, and he's playing extremely well, by the way, too. He's just really upped his game even that much further. But yeah, in his last 11 games, we talked about it: 29 points, 6 rebounds, 10 assists, and he is in his first All-Star game. So yeah, just kind of more of a collective grit of the week, of maybe the past 3 or 4 weeks. But I think for me, it's got to go to Cade Cunningham. He's my absolute dog. Yeah,
he's taken. I mean, everyone who was calling him a bust, having injury prone, stuff like that. He's basically just shoved your head in a locker and said, "Watch what I can do." So shout out to Cade. Both Trajan and Cade, as always, open invitation to come on the podcast and accept your rewards. And then I also want to give a potential grit of the week to Bally Sports. If you go ahead and follow suit with the Cleveland Indians and give us blackout-free games and make sure that we can watch all the Tigers game, I will happily give you guys grit of the week in a future episode. So just wanted to put that out there, that that's available. But shout out Trajan, shout out to Cade. Okay. That's our show. Thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode. You can find Kyle on Twitter at Kyle_Marino. You can find me on Twitter at Dutton_Tyler, and at both Pistons Powered and Champaign Athletics. Join the conversation next week by calling into the Grit Iron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That number is 313-306-7939. And if you like this episode, please take a moment to rate it 5 stars and leave us a nice review saying so.
Thanks, y'all. Restore the roar.
Yeah. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired, Grit Iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on, blast beats, thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Grit Iron Report, where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow.